comes up very often here in South Florida about Baal Tashchis. The pasuk says in Parash Shoftim, Ki satzer al ir yamim rabim. If you surround the city in a milchama yamim rabim, lilachim alel l'tafsa, to fight it and to take it over. Leisashchis es eitza lindayach alei garzin. You shouldn't destroy its wood, its trees, lindayach alei garzin, to put an axe to it. Ki mimenu seichel, because you're going to eat from it. But oisei leisichris, you shouldn't cut it down. Ki adam eitza asada lavi mipanach b'matzar. And Rashi teaches because a tree is not like a person that you need to besiege it. Meaning you're trying to get the people. Why would you cut down the trees? And the next pasuk continues. Rak eitz asher teda. Only a tree that you know kilay eitz machelhu, that it's for sure not a eitz machel. Oisei sashchis, that you could destroy the karasa and knock it down. But nisa matzah aliyir lavi mipanach b'matzah, and you could build a siege around them. Meaning, if Klal Yisrael is fighting, is waging a milchama, one malach is that to stop the food intake, the food coming into the city, so you knock down all the fruit trees, and therefore the enemy can't get a hold of food. So the pasuk is telling you that there's an isser Baal Tashchis. You shouldn't knock down the fruit trees. The pasuk says, because you might come to eat from it when you take over the city. You will come to eat from it. So there's a Gemara in Chayvel. Before that, this is the Issa Deraisa, and you get Malchus for this. The Gemara in Makkas, the Mishnah Makkas says that a person could do one Maisa, be cherish betal mechad, and be over 8 lavin, and says he's a kain and nazir basic forest with climb, and he's being cherish beklim, b'shvius, a bunch of different isurim. And the Gemara asks that v'lichshav, why don't you count also if the plow runs over a tree and a fruit tree and knocks it over, so you should be over another Isser, and you should get Malchus for that also of Baal Tashchis. So you see, Klar, it's Isser, right? So you get Malchus for it, and that's Isser Baal Tashchis. There's a Gemara in Chayvel. It says like this: Omer Rav, Dikla detan kava asr l'miktzei. A palm tree, detan kava that holds a beer's fruit, a kav, certain measurement. Asr l'miktzei, you can't cut it down. Meisvei, the Gemara asks a question: Kami yehi bezayis v'lo yiktzatzu roiva. It says by olive tree that if you have a roiva, which is a roiva kav, a quarter of a kav of olives, if the tree bears a quarter of a kav, then you already can't cut it down. Meaning, if the tree is getting older and it's stopping to bear fruit, if there's at least a kav, or the Gemara is asking a steer to zayis when it's a roiva kav, then you shouldn't. Then you can't knock it down. So the Gemara says, "Shiny zaysim the chashivi." The difference is dekel is less chashiv and zaysim are more chashiv. And if the tree is giving a chashiv amount of fruit, you have no right to cut it down. That's Isser Baal Tashchis. Then the Gemara says, "Amar Reb Chanina, leishachiv shivchas bri ela dekatz teinas b'lei zimna." My son, Reb Chanina said, my son shivchas, he died. The only reason why he died was the cuts teinas b'lei zimna, because he cut down a date tree b'lei zimna. He cut down a fig tree b'lei zimna before its time. Meaning, even though maybe it was older, but and he cut it down, he didn't have a heter to because it was still bearing fruit. So it was Isser Baal Tashchis, and that's why he died, which is mida keneged mida. He chopped down a tree b'lei zimna, so he died b'lei zimna. Amar Ravina. And Ravina gives a heter for this, even though it's the Isser Baal Tashchis. If it's mola b'damim, means if the tree gives, if the wood of the tree is worth more than the paris it gives, then it's mutter. Why? Because that's not ashchasa. You're gaining from it. The fruit are not worth as much as the wood. So chop down the tree, you have the wood, and you have more from the tree itself than from the pears. Then the Gemara brings a brayz to back that up. Then the Gemara brings two stories. Shmuel Aisi Le'arisei Tamri, Shmuel's Aris. Shmuel's worker brought him dates. Achel Talmud Time Chamri. He ate them and they tasted like, they had the taste of wine. These dates had the taste of wine, of grapes. Amalei Maihai, so he asked his worker, what's going on over here? Why do they taste like wine? Amalei Beni Gufni Kaimi, because the dates are growing in between the wine, in between the grapevines. Amar, so Shmuel said, Makchashi B'chamra Kulihai, L'macha Aisli Mikurayu. He said they must be destroying the grapes, because if you plant the dates next to the grapes and ad kedekach so far that they even taste like the grapes now, they must be destroying the grapes. And L'macha Aisli Mikurayu, tomorrow bring me from Kurayu. Mikurayu, Rashi says, it means from the roots. Mikar Shalahan is one shot, and the second shot is Kur, is also, it's a part of the root that's soft and edible. So he was saying, in short, chop down the tree and bring me from the roots. So he told his worker to chop down the tree. If it's ruining the grapes, chop down the tree. That's another heter the Gemara gives, that if it's ruining another tree, then you could chop it down. And Rav Chizda also, similar Maisa, Chazi Tali Begufni saw a palm tree in between his vines. So he told his worker to take it away. And why? He said because Gufni, Kani Dikli like Kani Gufni, because grapes could buy a palm tree, but the palm tree can't buy the grapes, meaning the grapes are worth more than the palms, and that's why, and if it's ruining them, so then you should get rid of it. Also, krinu, you should knock it down. So the Gemara is before the Gemara. You see, there's two heterim in this Gemara. That the Gemara says that there's a heter if it's mula b'damim, if the wood is worth more than the fruit itself, and another heter if it's ruining the fruit, if it's ruining other trees, so then that are worth more than it, so then you could also knock it down. And the Rosh here says, "Hu adin im tzarchum kaimai." He says, "Nerd im tzarchum kaimai." If you need the space of the tree, also that's a heter to knock it down. Maybe we'll see later exactly. We'll get into that heter, but that's the Gemara Nachayvel. And the Rebbe Tzalman Ranchberg asks, he wants to know that why the Torah and Shulchan Aruch don't bring down this halacha b'chlal of the Isser Baal Tashchis by a tree, and with these heterim, Torah and Shulchan Aruch don't speak about it b'chlal. He wants to know why not. But that's one Gemara. There's another Gemara in Bab Basra that says, there's another Gemara in Bab Basra also that says, or maybe we'll wait for that, but the Rambam brings down this halacha, and he says that there's this about Tashchis. It's not just by a siege where the pasuk brings down, but there's also but like the nice Kim say, the Gemara Makkos is mavor, and the Gemara Nachayvel is mavor that there's this about Tashchis time cutting down a fruit tree across the board, and he says the whole Isser is ba'ashchasa, is only if you're knocking down to destroy. But if you're knocking it down, and he brings these heterim, if you're knocking it down because it's worth more for the wood, or if it's better, or if you're saving a tree, if it's being mazik a different tree, or he brings another heter, the Gemara Babas is mavor, that if it's being mazik your friend's property, then also you could knock it down. That's how the Rambam paskins. And then he says, and not only from this pasuk, we also learn the other, like most people know, Baal Tashchis, you shouldn't stam destroy things, kalim and clothing, and stam things you shouldn't destroy. That's so you don't get malchus on that, but you do get malchus mardis, and that's also learned from the same pasuk. So that's the Rambam. There's a Taz over here. The Taz says a fascinating thing, which you wouldn't see it from the Gemara itself, but the Taz says like this. The Taz in Yordei Siman Kuf Tazayin, which speaks about Gila and Hilchas Sakana, the Taz says, Oid Achas Matzinu, another Sakana that we find, She'asur Chazal, Mipnei Sakana, Shaloi Lokates Ilan Ha'isa Peris, that you shouldn't cut down a tree that gives fruit. Just like the Gemara Nachayvel that we just saw, that Shivchas Bri, of Reb Chanina, he died. He cut down a teina and he died. So you see, there's a sakana to cut down a tree. And he says, but there are a term because of a rosh. Because of a rosh, he brings a gemara that says that if it's to save the better fruits, better trees, then you could knock it down. Because of a rosh, is also mutter. He brings that. And he says, and because of this, I was matter to clear away a fruit tree for someone who wanted to build a house on a plot of land which had a fruit tree, to knock down the tree and to build land because it's tzarech mimkaim. That's what Taz says. So Taz sees from this Gemara, which Kipshuti you could learn to Einish, the Taz sees that it's more than just Einish, but there's a sakana. Cutting down trees is a sakana, and that's why Shichvas, the son of Reb Chanina, died because he cut down a Teina B'loi Zimna. So the in Shelos Yavitz, the Yavitz has a few questions over here. The Lashon HaTaz is very interesting. The Lashon HaTaz is Oid Achas Matzinu She'asru Chazal. Chazal asered another thing, and he goes this, and he speaks out chopping down a fruit tree. The shal is, it's Issa Deraisa, Baal Tashchis. Why does he say that Chazal asered it? Mipnei HaSakana is Issa Deraisa. That's the first question. And the second question he asks is, what was Takab Pshat? It says that Amr B'Chanin Lo Shachav Shivchas Bri El Dekat Steina B'Loi Zimna. That means Shivchas Bri, Reb Chanina knew about his son Shivchas. Kener was a great Talmud Chacham. He was a big tzaddik, and he had not a single avera that you could find why Shivchas died, except he cut down a tree B'Loi Zimna, a fruit tree too early. So the question is that why Taka did Shivchas do it? He knows there's an Issa in the Torah about Tashchis. Why Taka did he cut down a tree? So the Yavitz wants to be mechadish, a very big chiddush over here in the sugya, and he says that it's pashut. Shivchas, it's pashut. He knew the Gemara and he knew the sugya that the whole Isser is only bashchasa, and there's a term, and he did it with that term. He did it with that term. Or if it was mola b'damim, he did it with all that term. But the Gemara is coming to tell us, Reb Chanina is coming to say that there's a new thing on top of that, even with that term. There's a sakana, and that's why the shachar shivchas bri because of kat steina b'loi zimna that he died because there's a sakana even with that term. That means all that term don't have. What? Oh, so the this is what the Yavit says. I saw the Shevet Levi asking the Benitzin. They all ask. It's not just a Taz. It's the Gemara. The Gemara says kat steina b'loi zimna, which means that there's a sakana. And then afterwards it says, but if it's mola b'damim, Ravina says, v'mhay mola b'damim, then it's mutter. It sounds like that term come afterwards. But this is what the Yavit says, and he starts off that it could be that it's a midas chasidus he should have been makbid on, and that's why he died. And he says inami that it's really for everyone, and everyone has not an isser but a sakana to chop down to cut down a fruit tree. And there's sakana even with all the heterim. And he says that's what Taz means, that it's only derabban asur chazal mipnei sakana because be'etzem we're going with the heterim, but still there's a new isser on top of that. And he brings the Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara in Pesachim says that not only is this a sakana, but hakaitzitz ilonis tevis. The Gemara says any reisim in bracha la'ilam, that besides the sakana, but also he's not going to be reisim bracha. So he says everyone should stay away unless you have a good heter. He's talking about l'tzarech mitzvah over there. He says maybe it's a heter, but a head yitaka has a real sakana to stay away from cutting down fruit trees, even with the heterim, because it's a sakana. He says, but one eitzah we do have is that if you don't cut down the tree and you uproot the tree and you plant it somewhere else, so he says that's not the whole problem is Baal Tashchis, and that's a sakana also by being mashchis the tree. But if you're not mashchis, so you just pick it up and replant it somewhere else. So he says less beis mechash, then there's no problem at all. You could do that. You could do it lechatchila. It sounds like if you just want to have fun, pick up trees, no problem. As long as they're gonna be planted somewhere else, that's not a problem at all. the so the Binyan Sin asks, besides for this kasha that the term come afterwards, he also asked that what's Pshan Shmuel? Shmuel, we said, in Chizda, they told their servants, knock down the tree. How could they knock down the tree? There's a sakana. So the Chassam Sofer says that he's medayik in the Gemara. The Gemara says, he's medayik in the Gemara, that the Gemara says that Shmuel told his worker, I see it's makchish b'chaim kulihai l'mach eisli mikurayu. He says, didn't tell him chop down the tree. He said, bring me mikurayu. Mikurayu means that bring me from the bottom, from the roots of the tree. Why? Don't chop down the tree. The Chassam Sofer says, you learn from this Gemara, you can't chop down a tree even with that terim. You need to pick it up and plant it somewhere else. So dig up the tree and bring me mikurayu and show me that you dug it up and then plant it somewhere else. And Rav Chizda also said akrinu. But Avada, you shouldn't. He says you could cut it down if there's no mahalach of moving it. But if there's mahalach of moving it, then it's usher to cut it. It's usher to cut it down, and you need to move it. So that could be pshat batzim in Shmuel, that Shmuel says akrinu. That could be pshat in the Yavitz, that he wasn't saying to cut it down, but he was saying to uproot it and to plant it somewhere else. But the Chassam Sofer says, he does argue in the Yavitz and says that according to him, that Shmuel said because it's ruining the other trees, then go uproot the tree and plant it somewhere else. It sounds like, not like the Yavitz that says that you could just uproot it, no problem. He says even uprooting it, there is a sakana, unless you have that terim that it's mo'ol b'dam, or not mo'ol b'dam, but if it's ruining other trees, or being mazik chaver, or any other heter of tzarech l'mkaimah, but you need the heter, you can't just pick up a tree and move it stamazeh. Oh, so I see there's not so much time left. I would want to go straight to the heterim. There are a few heterim here that there's a bunch of shalos coming up about cutting limbs of trees. If you don't cut the entire tree down, what's with cutting just a few limbs of the tree or trimming the tree? So there's Bar Shava. The Bar Shava asks that we find that they brought for the mizbeach, for the atzei, for the eitzim on the mizbeach was made of charoi shel teina, from date trees. So the question is, how are they allowed to cut date trees for the mizbeach? How could they be over Baal Tashchis? What? So that's the only wood they were able to use for the mizbeach. So Kibshita, they went and they chopped down trees, and the Gemara says they used to cut trees for the atzei mizbech. So
maybe they were past the age that they were.
So and you could say it's only those trees. Could be. He says Zadech to say that it's these trees were all his. So the Bar Shava says al tzarich mitzvah. There's no iser of ashchasa. That's his teretz. The Kesef Mishnah says to him, I don't understand what you're talking about. Why do you need to chop down an entire tree to get the atzei to get the atzei mizbech? They trimmed all the trees and they took all the wood and they brought it for the mizbech. He says there's no isser. He said he doesn't know where it's merum is the isser of trimming trees in this isser bal tashchis. So you see machlek is Kesef Mishnah and the Bar Shava, and the Aruch Shulchan Taka says to trim trees is mutter if it's l'tzarich mekaymai. He says then it's mutter. Oh, l'tzarich mekaymai is a shaila. What's nichol and tzarich mekaymai? The Yavit says tzarich mekaymai. He wouldn't give a heter unless you mamish need the space and you can't live without it. But stam, just because you want to build a house or investment house or any other reason or make a little space for yourself, that's not enough. But and the Chuvas Chavis Yar also says for he says that's not mekayim. Yeah, that's not the heter of mekayim b'chlal even for this. That's the Chuvas Chavis Yar also he says it's only if you're building a house on top of that property, or l'davar nitzuch loi. He says masha'enkin to be marchiv a makom for like a chatzar or l'tzarich til, where he says taisvis ar if you want more light. V'revach b'alma and stam space is aser. That's what he says, and the Shevet Levi says tzarichin because nowadays. His lashon. He says, "Tzarichin l'dina the taisvis av revach b'alma b'zman hazeh tzarich rav." So he says nowadays people need air, need space, and mela kipshute that will be nichol in the heter. And the Aruch Shulchan Taka goes that it's also. He says tzarich mekem is only if you're building a house on it, but stam to have space is aser. So as machlek is genei what tzarich mekem is. But I did see the Rashba says that if it's being mazik your house, if the tree is being mazik your house, that is enough of a tzarich to cut it down, to cut it down, and he says to cut it down. This is about Tashchis. He's not. He's talking about cutting. This sir. I did see it's very negaya. I know a lot of people have it that the I think it's the Chikr Lev who brings the Shiloh. A lot of people have. I know. I just had the past 3 weeks. I needed a hazmat suit to walk out of my house because of all the mangoes on the floor in the front yard, the bugs, and you walk into a whole swarm of flies when you just walk out to the street. So the Chikr Lev, someone asked him the Shiloh that he doesn't like the bugs that come to all the fruit. So could he cut the tree for that? And he says that's not enough of a tzarich. He says, I'll give you 2 eitzes. Either you cut the limbs, which he holds as mutter, or he says you could cut it down until the last limb and leave one branch just that will keep the fruits. Or he says you could uproot it and that's the only eitzah. There's just to finish off. There's other term of if you do it al yedei a guy, so kipshute there's no shlichus by a guy, so memela it should be mutter. The problem is the Erech Shai asked that there is shlichus l'chumra, so midrabanan it should be aser. So they give another heter if you sell it to a guy with shtar and kesef. So that if you sell it to guys, then it's not yours, and he could do with it whatever he wants. But the Marsham says that there's a problem of harsha on a deraisa. So he asked that there should be haram. I'm sorry, on a deraisa. It's harama. You're selling it, but we know exactly why you're selling it, and we know it's not the best mechir. But he says that we're handling a sakana here, and there's no harama by sakana. The person zicha doesn't want it because he knows that if he has it, he's going to have this sakana when it gets cut down. So it's zicha not a sakana. It's zicha not a sakana, and there's no problem of haram with deraisa. And the other eitzah is that if you do with the guy, if the guy cuts it down, so it will be shlichus l'chumra, which is only midrabanan, so then there's no problem of haram anymore. So if you sell it to a guy and a guy cuts it down, so then there are places in the matter.